see that? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter. It was kind of cold here, but great day, great Easter. By the way, my Yanks won again, so that's 3 series in a row. The Yanks are 6-3. They beat the Giants in the series 2-1. They beat the Phillies 2 out of 3, and they beat the Orioles after losing the first game. Pretty happy. At this rate, 6-3. That's how they'd win 108 games, and the Rays would win 162. Aren't the Rays still undefeated? Like they're 8-0, 9-0. Crazy. But anyway, this is not a sports channel. If you want to hear my sports, go to Yankee Talk. Still working on that channel. It's not really. It's there, but needs a lot of work. But anyway, Yankee Talk if you're interested. So, getting right into this, I'll tell you, Joe Rogan had the podcasts were amazing last week, like the old Joe Rogan. So interesting, weird, stayed away from politics. Hate Joe Rogan's politics these days. As you know, he's gone to the right. He's ideologically captured now. I talked about it in another video. So I can't stand that stuff. Joe Rogan used to be my one stop, right? I used to love everything he said. Like I thought he was the greatest guy on planet Earth. He was just such a cool dude. And now his politics are nutty. It's right wing. So I go for my politics. I have other channels I go. Anyway, David Choe, number 1965. Probably, if you go on Reddit too, probably one of Joe Rogan's favorite. Like he's a huge favorite. He's been on, I think, twice before. I don't know if people who know him, he's kind of this very weird, eccentric artist dude. He's he's Korean, yeah, whatever. But came on with this weird outfit with paint and everything. But the guy is so nutty, eccentric, and super interesting. Like he's just this eccentric guy. He has all these crazy stories where he was in Africa. Got to listen to that part. But anyway, I'm going to talk about this one point where David Choe really comes down on comedians. Like, first of all, like all these stand-ups who try to act cool. Like they come out with I guess he's talking about what they're wearing. And David Choe's like, hey man, you're like the court jester. You're a comedian. You're supposed to make people laugh. Like what is this? Like come out goofy or something, you know? Like guys who are like real handsome and they have come out in a suit doesn't really work with comedy. Kind of Joe disagrees because Joe has come out with a suit. He talks about that. Anyway, they're getting into Eddie Murphy, how Eddie Murphy was the best. I happen to agree, by the way. I think he would have been the greatest comedian of all time, in my opinion. It's not even close as George Carlin. By the way, Joe Rogan doesn't really like him, which is weird. Joe has weird taste. That's another thing, kind of, his comedy. But Eddie Murphy, absolutely. Richard Pryor. I think Carlin was better than Richard Pryor. I loved Pryor, but Carlin's my guy. And Eddie Murphy, although he didn't do it for a long period of time after Saturday Night Live. I think he was 22 when he did Delirious, and then he did Raw. Like at the time in the 80s, I haven't seen it in many years. I don't know if it's still funny, but anyway, this guy David Choe talking about like how comedy is losing something. We have all these podcasts and they talk about how comedy works. Instead of being silly, they're talking about the mechanics and breaking down how I worked on this set. And in fact, he's insulting Rogan, kind of, because that's what the Joe Rogan show is when he has these comedians. Well, I've been working this bit and shaping it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, do we fans, we really want to know this stuff? Maybe. I mean, I like the behind the scenes stuff. But anyway, Let me play a little bit of this. Just gonna hold my phone up here. I have copyright issues, kind of a problem, but just to get my point across here. Listen.
Walk on stage with notes. They would let him.
Right.
You could do whatever. If they knew you were just working out on stuff, people would let him do it.
Well,
and he would get it again. Like he did a speech once at what was it again for some award show. He did this speech where he did a Bill Cosby impression, talked about them taking Bill Cosby's awards away.
Mark Twain Award.
Mark Twain.
Okay, it's Eddie Murphy. Okay, it'll get into in a second. Listen.
Mm-hmm. It was fucking hilarious. It was like sharp. The timing was on. I was like, if that guy kept doing comedy, there would have been no doubt. He would have been number one of all time. He was incredible.
As a fan of comedy and who's watched,
Here
like,
it
because
comes.
I have this access that everyone also has access to all these documentaries and comedies.
Let me
and
just
this
pause this.
isn't just-
He's talking about how we have access to every stand-up you could ever say. Like you could go through, and that goes with everything, like fighting and sports, whatever you're interested in. It's all there. It's all there. And when we were growing up, there's nothing before the internet. Like he was talking about the Eddie Murphy stand-up. Like he had a tape and he'd pass it around. Like you knew Eddie Murphy, of course, you knew George Carlin, and Richard Pryor, whatever, Dice Clay that came out in the '80s, and Kinnison, whatever. But now the internet, everyone could see this. So here we go. Let me continue on.
Isolated to comedy, it's to anything, right? Like everyone who I know who's a music, like when I heard One by Metallica,
The double drums.
there's no YouTube video that shows you how to do double bass. You're like, what the fuck is that? You have to figure that out. But now everyone who's spent a lifetime crafting whatever their art is, they're giving it away in a TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So when Louis C.K. has a special, he goes on like 10 podcasts and talks about where the joke comes from, how he can, like how he. So it's like the magician revealing all the magic tricks, and part of that is great because like you're going to learn more now from YouTube than you are from like school or anything. But because all the great artists, all the great magicians are giving away their wizardry, like when they do the joke now, you don't like the surprise is gone. You're like, oh, that's how he did. Like you saw how they made the sausage. So and so as someone who loves comedy, this is how I feel. And look, there's always exceptions to the rule, but most comedy, I either feel like they're talking down to me, or they're talking at me, or they're trying to teach me, or they're something like that. I'm like, funny, number one priority, fun, like jokes, laugh, and it's like, let me teach you something, let me show you what time it is, let me this, and I'm like, there's so many podcasts that talk about the art of comedy, the behind the stage, behind the scenes. This is like this working out material, and like now it's just like a normal dude that doesn't know about. That didn't know any of that shit. There's too much shit. So when I'm like, I just want the joke to just be a joke. Like, what if I knew everything about how Eddie Murphy came up with the Raw act? He's like, oh, this happens. Like, does it aid the comedy, or does it make it like you're watching a TED Talk or something?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on how funny it is. Like, there's people that I know, like Shane Gillis. I'll watch his set over and over and over again because I know it's funny.
Right.
I know where the jokes are. I still want to see them again and again. They're so funny.
Right.
But let me pause this. I made my point. How many times are you going to watch a joke? Comedy doesn't age well, especially if you heard it 2-3 times. Most of the comedy's surprise, right? So, like, I don't know what he's disagree with him here. By the way, it depends how deep you are. Like if you're a professional comedian, you like that stuff. Like how did you make this joke? What was the process? I do understand that. And same with me. I my hobbies like sports, martial arts, not so much martial arts anymore, but I'd like to know all the deep stuff. How deep you want to go with this, get into the weeds. But anyway, good point. Excellent podcasts. Like the Jay Okerson I talked about the last time, Jay Okerson and Ari Schiffer, I like those guys. That was an amazing podcast, very little politics, which I love. And this guy, David Choe, probably the best podcast, Joe Rogan, you'll ever see. He is a character. He's very eccentric and off the wall, and I got to tell you, I loved it. So there you go. I want to keep this under 10. I'm at the 9-minute point. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Some more sports. Really happy with my Yanks. They're playing, not the Indians, the Guardians. See, I'm a progressive, but I think that stuff is ridiculous, over the top, woke stuff. And playoffs start Tuesday. The play-in, the Nets play the 76ers next week. Those are my teams: Nets, Brooklyn Nets basketball, and New York Yankees. Okay, good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding here at Taper Talk.